to talk about some of the methods of collecting macroinvertebrates. Common methods include dip nets, kick nets, and simply turning over rocks and looking through the various habitat to see what's in the stream segment. Dip nets are used to sample all available habitat types. These nets are shaped like a D. They're often called D nets. They're used with a jabbing collection method. We often tell groups this is not a shovel. You're not trying to collect all of the sediment in the stream. You're trying to disturb the sediment and scoop up the invertebrates that live there. Some of the habitats you would be sampling with a dip net include leaf packs, pools, root mats, might be the overhanging vegetation on the side of the stream, woody debris, and you want to collect these, sample these habitats in both fast and slow moving water. There's a lot of different species that would live in a fast moving root mat than a slow moving root mat. Also sand, any other habitat that's there. An important thing to remember when you're sampling habitats, if you're sampling a reach that is mostly dominated by sandy bottom, and there's one large leaf pack, you don't want all of your samples to come from that one leaf pack. You'd also want to collect samples from the sand. Avoid filling your net with mud and sand, and then once you have your sample collected, you would dump that into a white pan to sort through it and find anything that was in the sample. Kick nets are used in riffles only. The way the kick net is used, there are two wooden poles with a net strung between them. You put the poles at the downstream end of a riffle, and a partner kicks up the substrate in front of the kick net to displace all of the macroinvertebrates living in that section of the stream, and then the current pulls them down into the dip net. The kick net. Kick nets are used in riffles only because you have to have that flowing water in order to pull the species into the net. Some of these nets have a weighted line on the bottom. Be sure that is down in the substrate really well. Sometimes you have to use rocks or sticks to hold the bottom of the net in place. Another thing, you want to make sure that the top of your net is not under the water where macroinvertebrates would flow over the top of the net. You're typically sampling 1 square meter. These nets are 1 meter across, so you'll stand back in the stream about 1 meter and disturb 1 square meter of substrate. When you're removing the net from the water, you want to make sure that you pick the net up on both sides and let the water drain out so you don't lose all of your macroinvertebrates. After you have your sample in your net, we typically lay the net on the bank on a plastic shower curtain so that it's easy to pick through and find what's living in it. The index that we use to dictate the quality of the stream based on macroinvertebrates is the Mays method, the Macroinvertebrate Aggregated Index for Streams. July and August are the ideal months to conduct this monitoring. It's good to always conduct the sampling in the same time of year, year after year. If you collect samples in early July one year and don't collect the samples till the end of September the next year, the families of macroinvertebrates that are living in that stream at that point in time will be different, and it's not specifically related to water quality, more so the time of year that you're sampling. A Mays reach is about 150 meters per site. You want to make sure there are 3 riffles within that reach. This is where you use your kick net, 1 square meter in each riffle. You will do 20 dip net samples at each section, and each dip net sample is one specific habitat. So you might sample a sandy pool, you might sample a leaf pack, you might sample a root mat, and you would sample those proportionally to what's available there. Again, if most of the stream is sandy substrate, you'll want to get most of your samples from a sandy substrate. All of the macroinvertebrates that you collect are preserved in 70% ethanol alcohol, and they will be later identified to a family level. There is a field sheet, which I'll show here shortly. On the field sheet, you'll record conditions of the site, as well as conditions of the substrate, the recent weather patterns. The score that is generated after you do your identification will give you a score for that site ranging between 0 and 18. These scores are used to document the impact and or recovery of a site. The field sheets for maize are fairly simple. At the top is all of your collector information. Who is doing the monitoring, when, what is the site name, what watershed are you in. One thing that is not specifically on the field sheet that we always be sure to add is your field crew. You want to add everyone that was out there. Just in case there's a question about something on the field sheet, you can go back and ask the crew that's out there. Weather conditions are important to put on your field sheet. This year we've had a lot of heavy rain, so if we're sampling a stream the day after we've had 2 inches of rain, we want to make sure to put that in there because some things could have been washed downstream. This map is very important. I might know exactly where I collected my samples this year to repeat that next year, but if it's somebody else going to this site next year, they'll be able to look back at this map and see where your riffles are in comparison to a bridge or an intersection or another tributary coming into the site. The back of the field sheet is more habitat related. This is going to show you what's around the watershed in the riparian area. Any pollution, this is a place to add any water quality issues. If you have a meter with you, it's a great place to record any of your chemical parameters as well. This concludes the methods collection for macroinvertebrates.